Awesome. All right. Well, I'm going to just give a little chat about my experience building on L1 and some issues I ran into and how Appchains can fix those scaling and issues. So just quick background on myself. I've been a software engineer for the last 10 years. Really got into crypto on the investing side in 2017, did some Solidity development in 2018, but jumped full-time into blockchain development after winning a hackathon in January of 2021. Or 2022. Wow, time's flying. But so what we first built was an American-style options protocol trading on a central limit order book on top of Solana. And where we wanted to go was into trading infrastructure. But we ran into a bunch of issues along the way. So before I go into the issues we ran into, just kind of a little bit about Sci Options and Sci Finance and where we're going is we're creating a decentralized organization focused on the democratization of financial infrastructure. I got into this when I was denied API access by a brokerage to automate some basic options trading, and that's what kind of led to entering the hackathon and building options into the blockchain. But options didn't really take off too much, so we were focused on structured products with Sci-Fi. We have a team out of Singapore that's been contributing and building that stuff. Just launched our V2 UI this week. And then we are focused on options, airdrops, and options-based liquidity mining with our project Fusion. We think there's a better way to distribute tokens to community, align incentives, give upside. DAO token swaps should be options, aligning upside, etc. So going a little bit back to the trading infrastructure is we wanted to build, CeFi in DeFi. We wanted to compete with the FTX, the Binances of the world. And so you have to, what attracts traders is capital efficiency. So you want to cross-margin, the spot markets with perpetual futures or term futures and options to create like the most capital efficient, infrastructure there can be that will attract market makers who are going to put tighter spreads, which then attracts more traders. And then that's how you kind of solve this two-sided marketplace. But for those who don't know Solana development, or if you've never developed on top of an L1, you have to deal with the runtime constraints that are imposed on you. So for Solana, you have this arbitrary compute number that based on how much compute you use from your protocol or your contract, if you hit that compute limit, it just stops. There's no gas. You can't just endlessly burn gas or run out of gas. So everything you build has to be within the fines of that compute limit. And then you also have these account infrastructure or account data structures that have to be fit to what you're building, and you have a limited data size. So when you're architecting your application, you really have to think about the data architecture underneath the hood of what the L1's actually doing, and confine your engineering decisions to the decisions that have been made for you by that L1. So when we were trying to build this, we didn't have any chance of, or it became very clear that it's very hard to compete with CeFi when you have to, deal with all these constraints. And for CeFi, they can just up, the amount of servers they're using or boost the servers they're currently using if they need more compute, or you can't. And then also, for those who've paid attention in the broader crypto world, Solana, we've seen a lot of scaling issues, not just from the architecture perspective that you have to make, but also just the network being congested and not hitting the scalability that they originally said could be done. A lot of this is happening through bots trying to mint NFTs, bots who are running arbitrage opportunities, trying to collect some MEV, and liquidator bots. What they're really doing is they're spamming data packets directly to the validator nodes instead of going through an RPC node, and they are flooding the network. And so you have all these other applications that are driving all of this traffic and basically DDoSing the network. And so if you're trying to build a trading platform that requires traders to make trades in less than a second, and the network's going down and assets are changing prices elsewhere, they're not going to have a good experience. And so when you have all these other applications flooding the network, your application becomes terrible, and then it's not going to actually work and take off the way it should. And so that's where like Appchains solve these kinds of issues. You get to actually, instead of being confined to the L1 that you're building on top of, you can actually make decisions and trade-offs that fit your specific application's needs. So instead of having to have a limited compute for this application, you can actually drive, you can use as much compute and subsidize that compute usage for the trading application. And then you also have the flexibility of creating or of allowing what applications can be built and deployed onto these networks and what can't. So while we've seen NFTs, Solana has been focusing a lot on NFTs, we see a ton of bots that are sniping these NFT mints and flooding the network. Well, you can create an app chain that has a Apple App Store-like deployment process where there is a vote about what can be deployed and what cannot. So you could design this chain and its purpose specifically focused on trading infrastructure. So then you can basically cut out all the noise that comes from these NFT mints and other things if that's what the chain and the community desires. So this is something we've been exploring a lot. We'll probably dive more into it in the second half of 2022, which is quickly coming up once we finish a lot of the existing backlog and infrastructure working on. But we think that Appchains can make a huge difference when you're running into scalability problems building on an L1. So that's kind of the gist. If you want to reach us, we're at sci-fi.io is where our new soft launch UI actually just launched this week. We haven't even tweeted really about it. And then my contact information is below. If you ever want to chat about blockchain scalability, Rust development, that's kind of where I'm at. And I'm also like big into decentralized organizations at the moment. I think they are DAOs, not DAOs, because there's nothing autonomous about them for anyone who's actually been trying to use a decentralized organization to affect some change or do something. So we're doers. Awesome. Any questions? All righty. Pretty self-explanatory. Thanks for the time, guys.